Welcome everyone to Beyond Westwood. Today's program, we will share tips, strategies, and insights from Bruins living in Los Angeles and Orange County. Many of you are here today because you're interested or preparing to move away from campus and stay in the Southern California area, and that can bring up lots of questions. And we hope today's program will share insights from our alumni and give you the information you need to make this move with confidence and support. I want to introduce myself. My name is Gloria Coe, and I serve as Senior Director for Alumni Career Engagement here at the UCLA Alumni Association. I'm a double Bruin with a degree in communications and a master's in education. And I'm very excited for you to meet our panel because we'll be having a conversation today around all the things that you may be thinking as you begin your life in alumnihood. The Alumni Association is here to support you, to walk with you while you're here as a student, but then also when you graduate. And we're excited to engage you and provide you content, connections, and also just to be with you as you walk through life beyond UCLA. So for today, I'm excited because we'll be joined by Eden Tsai, class of 1996, Jeff D. Acosta, class of 2018, Carolyn Buenaflor, class of 2001, and a master's in public health in 2003, and Krista Haddadin, class of 2016. So it's going to be a great conversation. For some housekeeping, we will begin our panel with some prepared questions guided by some of the questions that you submitted when you registered for the event. And then also afterwards, we will have a Q&A. So please use the Q&A function below on the bar below to put in questions that you may have. And but we will also use the chat to engage with you, ask you questions. Feel free to connect with one another. And I also encourage you to introduce yourself into the chat, share where you're planning on moving, whether that's LA, staying in LA, or Orange County. And so I want to invite our panelists to turn on their cameras and we will get started. So welcome to all of our panelists. So thankful that you're here to join us. So why don't we start off with introductions? So if you could do a quick introduction of your path after you graduated and what led you to the LA and OC area, that will kick us off and give us a lay of the land of your experiences. So does anybody want to start us off, or I can pick someone to go? Crystal, if you could start us off, that'd be great.
Sure. So I graduated from UCLA in 2016. I'm from Southern California. I'm from the 626, like Pasadena area. And as much as I love the San Gabriel Valley, I loved West LA a lot better. And so I didn't really want to move back after college was done. And, my parents intended that was what I was going to do. And I found an apartment in West LA and have been here since. So I'll be actually in this same unit since I graduated in 2016. So almost 10 years.
Awesome. Happy anniversary. That's great.
Thanks.
How about you, Eden?
So, okay, I'm Eden. I graduated in 96 in psychology, and I actually didn't end up working in psychology. My first job was in healthcare in Alhambra. So I was commuting for a little bit between Westwood and Alhambra, and that's quite a trek. And then, along the way, I found a job in Orange County, and then now I'm back in LA as a VP of marketing.
Fantastic. Carolyn?
Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Buenaflor, graduated 01. I majored in Phi-Sci and also had a minor in classics. And I went straight to grad school after undergrad, also at UCLA, master's in public health in 03. So I kind of stuck around. I grew up in Bakersfield and I wasn't going to go back to Bakersfield. So that was part of it. And I actually ended up moving in with my sister. She was also living in Los Angeles at that time. So I was very lucky. And just how things work out, I had to do an internship for my master's in public health, and it was in Los Angeles, and it was grant funded, so I was able to transition that into a new position. So I ended up just staying in LA since I came to UCLA.
Great. And Jeff T?
Hey everyone, my name is Jeff D. Acosta, pronounced like lefty but with a J. Um, I graduated with a linguistics degree in 2018, and I got an MBA with a marketing concentration, but from Louisiana State University. I actually was born and raised in Orange County, in Anaheim specifically. I moved to Westwood when I was in college. When I graduated, it was very unlinear, I want to say, if that's even a word. But I moved back to Orange County with my family when I graduated. I worked in downtown LA and commuted. As you might imagine, that was a horrible commute. But I only did that for a year before moving out of state to Pennsylvania, where I worked for a media network in Philadelphia. I stayed there for almost 3 years before transitioning back to LA, which is when I moved into where I currently live in Koreatown. And due to different hobbies and different interests of mine, I frequently in Orange County still. So I want to say I'm from both LA and Orange County.
Great. So you're perfect for this panel. Great. Well, thank you all for being here today. So my first question actually is before we dive into logistics and all of that, mindset, I think, is very important for any new grad to consider, because I think oftentimes we overlook that, because and then we kind of think, oh, all the skills and the mindset that I had as a student will just carry me forward. But what has been a mindset shift you've had to make during the time of transition between being a student and then being a new professional? Does anyone want to share what mindset shift they made?
I'll go ahead. I think the biggest, at least socially, was that none of my friends and I were living within the same like vicinity anymore, right? When you're on the hill or when you're north of Wilshire, in the village, it's so easy to just meet up with friends. And so there was a little bit more of a dynamic shift where if my friends, so most of my, I was a transfer, I transferred into UCLA, and most of my friends were also transfers. So majority of us lived and went back home to SoCal or stayed in Los Angeles. It took a little bit more of an effort to get the collective together than, just go a block down the street and like hang out at somebody's house. So that was, I think, the biggest thing that I noticed after I initially moved away from the village. And then also like just work wise, but that came later on, and I can get to that once other people, uh, have some input.
Great. Anybody else want to share a mindset shift they had to make?
I can share a little bit because mine was like I felt like I had a transitionary period where I lived with my sister, and fortunately, I was able to live with her for free during that time. So that helped out quite a bit financially, and she got engaged and I got kicked out. So, but that's okay. They're still my best friends. So I think for me, the mind shift was, yes, I think Crystal, regarding, you have really, really close friendships and you're always around everyone in the village. And I had a bit of that transition already because I lived, not far from, I mean, I lived out of Westwood, my grad school years as well. I think for me, it was just being open to, and we're talking about where it is, but also just work wise for me, where I was really open to just anything. Like I want to stay in LA and however way it is, because I was like not moving back to Bakersfield. So, and I know, job market's a little bit tougher these days than when I graduated, where, I went on lots of interviews and stuff like that, but just being open to things. And I, even a certain pickiness to make sure that it was like, I worked throughout college as a front office receptionist for healthcare offices and medical offices. And I was like, I had to do that until I found like my footing in nonprofit, which is where I wanted to work. So just being open to like, okay, you may not get that first job. It's not going to be your ideal position unless you're very lucky, I think. But to me, it was like, well, I need something because I want to stay in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
I can go next.
Great.
One mindset that I had to to do and learn was being patient with myself, right? When I was in college, I may have been a little delulu thinking that I was going to, have that job that's going to sustain my life in LA, but that wasn't the reality, at least for me. And so being patient and, I did have to do that commute and live with my parents because, I wasn't able to be in a place where I could move back to LA or stay in LA or, sustain my life. And so being patient and knowing when is the right time to move out or when is the right time to, either have a roommate or live alone, that also requires some patience as well.
That's a great one. How about you, Eden?
Yeah, another mindset shift may be understanding that, okay, once you graduate, it's not like you're done. This is actually the beginning of another phase. And if you think of the next phase, always being a lifelong learner. So embrace that you don't know everything. You just need to have the courage to ask the right questions and then just be open to continual learning all throughout. So it's just the beginning of another, I guess, a degree in life.
That's great. Yeah, I'm always reminded that commencement actually means the beginning. So it doesn't mean the end, it means the beginning. So that's definitely a great mindset shift. So we actually wanted to poll the audience just to gauge where you're at. If you could, you have add in one in the chat if you are someone that already has a job lined up and you know where you need to, like you're now looking to figure out like where you're going to live. And then two is if you don't really have a job and you're just figuring it out and seeing and exploring whether Los Angeles is the place for you. We'll also wanted to gauge your thoughts and then see where you land in the questions. And we'll guide your questions to align with what you are feeling. And I guess three, if you're just here for the vibes and you just want to like be around people who can share information. So that's also fine as well if you're not quite sure either. So one, if you already have a job lined up and then you're ready, you just know you just need to find a place in LA. And then two, if you're still looking and still figuring out your next steps. So if you can, add that into the chat. So I guess when it comes to starting your life in LA, I wanted to ask your thoughts for your journeys. How did you settle on where you would live? We've already a little bit delved into the fact of commute in LA and Orange County. That is a thing. That is something that is a part of the calculus of figuring out where you're going to live. How did you settle on where you would live, and how did you decide on the particular neighborhood of where you were going to land? Anybody want to start us off?
I can start with this. My family teases me that I can't be too far away from the 405, as horrible as it is. So I think there is something about that where I've lived in the Valley, I've lived in West LA, and I've lived in the South Bay, and my main freeway has always been the 405. I think honestly for me, it's just weather and not, I don't like anything more inland than where I am now. I think it's just more comfort. I just know this area. I think that's all it is. It could be more pricey, but weather-wise, I know that was a big factor for me. Not quite the 405, it's more weather. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I understand. Go ahead, Crystal.
Sorry, so this was actually a really interesting experience for me because when I first transferred to UCLA, I didn't understand that 10 miles in the San Gabriel Valley was a shorter distance than 10 miles in like the city of LA. And so I had initially lived in Sherman Oaks, thinking that commute from Sherman Oaks to campus wasn't going to be a problem, and it was. So then I, moved to Westwood, and once I graduated and my lease was up for my Westwood apartment, I refused to like live anywhere further than 10 miles around campus. I was comfortable with what was around campus, but I knew I didn't want to live in Westwood. And so, Palms is like a really popular area that a lot of people who are in grad students, there's some like grad and family housing in Palms off Sepulveda, and I think it's national. So I started looking around in that area, and then I ended up moving to Mar Vista, which is a little bit smaller of a community, not too far from Palms. It's about a mile like southwest, give or take. And I found, I found an apartment that was within my price range, which was actually cheaper than what I was paying the time when I was living near campus. And it just afforded like all of the amenities that I wanted and all of the accessibility because I'm right where the 10 and the 405 kind of intersect. And I knew that if I was looking for jobs, if I had to go to downtown, I wanted to be able to have multiple access points so I wasn't stuck doing what I was doing when I was commuting from Sherman Oaks to Westwood because that was like a nightmare. So I just wanted to have the ability to just have the access to drive and like whether that was like with public transportation or even just my own vehicle, get to where I needed to go depending on where I landed. So that's kind of how I settled in my neighborhood.
Great. Jeff or Eden, do you have any thoughts around this?
My advice might be for Orange County specific, but in Orange County, a lot of the apartment communities will have a walkability score. So if you're looking into communities and you don't know Orange County very well, there's always the walkability and then look at what else is nearby. Of course, I started a spreadsheet with, okay, this is how much each apartment's going to cost, what area it's in, what amenities it has. So those Excel skills come in really handy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think for me, like Eden mentioned, it was definitely a walkability factor. I hate having to rely on a car. I walk to my gym, I walk to the grocery store, if I can walk, I will do it. That being said, though, I did have several factors that needed to be met before I like chose on a place or decided on a place. And from one of those was being like, is it in my price range, especially considering that when I was ready to like finally like look for a place back in LA, I wanted to live alone. And so all of those different factors and including the walkability score and also just like the access to different social places and, also where some of my closest friends lived. So those were all different components that I kind of factored in when I was choosing where to live.
Great. No, thank you all for sharing. I think what's interesting, I think with LA and OC, every neighborhood has its uniqueness and again, food in this area in LA Orange County is also, I think, elite. I chose to stay in LA. I work at UCLA since I graduated, and so I feel so much of what you've all shared in terms of commute is a factor, neighborhood is a factor, the walkability or what's close to you because parking may not always be easy or included in your apartment. So these are all things to think about as you're deciding on where to live. And also, again, many people return to live with their families or they live with their sibling or something, right? And I think that's also great too, because again, it allows you to be in an area that you want to be in and still maintain your lifestyle and still be able to have a job. And so um, things, I think again, Los Angeles and OC have a lot of pros, but it's also unique to you and your experience. So what are some adulting things that you recommend students keep in mind when it comes to settling into their next place? Even if you didn't find, if even if you didn't necessarily find your own place and you landed somewhere, what were things that you had to change and prepare for? Because it's not just even finding the place, there's a lot of other stuff that comes with it. What were other adulting things that you had to factor in?
I can start. So I remember when I moved into where I currently live, I live alone and I live on the fourth floor of an apartment building. And I had gone to go grocery shopping and I had like a bunch of things that I needed to furnish my apartment. And prior to that, my family and my sisters had helped me move in, so it felt like very easy, right? But then when I finally did that first trip alone with all of my groceries and with all of my bags, and I was on the fourth floor, and just even opening the door to enter the building, I was like, oh wow, I'm really alone doing all of this. It was kind of like a moment of realization, right? And so I think keeping that mindset and knowing that you have to plan more time for laundry or for groceries, accommodate more time than just like walking out and you're at your car, right? Sometimes when I first moved to my place, I didn't have a parking spot, so I did have I did have to find street parking and that was difficult. But accommodating for that extra time was one thing that I did have to do.
And then budgeting is probably a key one. Budgeting, so when I first bought a home, I started like furnishing it with everything. And then now I got an apartment in LA for work, and I figured I'm just going to start slow, come with a bed, with a desk, some kitchen essentials, and then I'll work on the rest. So it's not like one big credit card bill of all the furniture all at once. Yes. And if I don't have to build another IKEA furniture, that would be wonderful.
I'm gonna piggyback off of Eden's comment, because I've been in an apartment for 10 years, but also moving in with somebody who had previously furnished common spaces and they left and another person came in. There was a time where I didn't have furniture. So like definitely budgeting is a good one. And I think that like you also have to consider that sometimes the furniture in the apartments that you've had prior don't necessarily fit, nor do they like are they accommodated in the same space that you are now moving into. So there was a lot of maneuvering, shifting, getting rid of stuff, and like having to buy all new stuff. So that was a that was an experience that, I didn't really enjoy doing a few times.
Carolyn, do you have any thoughts around this?
Definitely the budgeting part, especially once you move into your own home, and there's a lot more other expenses that pop up, and things that there's always projects around the home. I think for me, and I like doing it myself. I like just having like a toolbox is really cool to me. Even if you live in an apartment, just having small things like a screwdriver and all of that, I think is really helpful. So you don't always reliant on kind of your apartment manager to a certain extent, of course, but definitely once you have your own home, that I'm amazed at how many of my friends borrow my drill, and I'm like, don't you have your own drill? So that's one. It's just even just having a toolbox, yeah.
Great. So next I want to actually kind of pivot into maybe this concept around work and life balance, because I know with many times with being a student, it's much easier because work in your student life and your friends are all together all the time. As you began your first job after you graduated, did you have time for hobbies and friends? How did you find new friends? And how did you take care of yourself?
So for a lot of jobs, I ended up becoming friends with colleagues, coworkers around my same age, and either organize lunches or maybe, plan hiking trips or local hikes after work or on weekends. So a lot of my friends, when I first started out, ended up being colleagues. Balance is important. So no, you don't have to say yes to everything, and you have to protect your time so you also have a little bit of your rest and relaxation, and you can, always get back to work even more engaged. But I think this was what Crystal had said earlier. If you do not schedule time with your friends, it's not happening. And sometimes it takes all the stars to align for everybody's calendars to be open on the same night. So you have to plan and take initiative to maintain the old friendships as well.
I agree with all that. I think now I honestly is a little bit tougher with work-life balance because a lot of folks are hybrid and remote. So it's a little bit tougher to draw that line. Because I don't remember it, or maybe it's just more as I progress through my career where the responsibilities become more. So it's a little bit tougher. But I know just earlier in my career, it's not even a thought in my head, that balance, because it was always just I was at work and now I'm not. And I'm not taking work home, or work isn't, at homes and stuff. So I think it's a little bit tougher now. And I think you have to be really intentional about really completely closing things down. I actually, in my, I'm on a contract work right now. I'm doing consultant work where it's like my email is not on my phone. It's only certain things that I can be reached at. So just creating those borderline, just those borders. And the other thing, what Eden said, like my first few jobs is where I met a lot of my adult friends, was through those early positions, and I'm still friends with them to this day. I'm actually even more in touch with some of my college friends. So you start kind of finding folks, kind of making friendships that way too.
Crystal and Jeff, did you have any thoughts around this topic?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with everyone who just spoke, but being intentional about, providing space and time for social events and social gatherings because it can be easy, especially like if you live alone or if you work from home, it can be easy to just get super involved in work and just not have that separation of life, right? Of work and life and personal life. And so I think being intentional about setting some time to either spend with yourself or spend with your friends and your colleagues is definitely super important. I have some personal hobbies that I like to do, and so that has also provided me a space and an opportunity to be able to meet other folks outside of work, outside of like, even college, and having something that is completely different and that is completely separate because I find that when I hang out with my work friends, we talk about work, even if we're not at work, right? And so being able to hang out with people that don't know anyone from work, that has definitely helped to get my mind away from thinking about work all the time.
I'm gonna add having boundaries because I didn't learn this lesson until 7 years post grad and being in like a really high demanding field. Um, I didn't have great balance, work-life balance when I first graduated. I was so caught up in wanting to learn, more about the legal field and how it worked, and feeling uh what's the term? Like feeling like I was so grateful for my boss who gave me like my first big, job opportunity out of college and not really knowing like my footing in like my career yet and just kind of, saying yes to everything without having a boundary established really put me in a position where I was balancing or trying to balance and not succeeding for, like I said, 7 years. Work and personal and just leisure and everything else in between. So don't be afraid to say no, even to your boss, if it's like a high demanding job or even an internship, right? It's your time is precious. And, even if it's a new learning opportunity, I just would not put your mental health at risk. So boundaries with balance, I think, are two of the most important things you can learn.
How did you find the courage 7 years in? Because after
Uh,
people got used to you not.
Yeah, it took, I mean, like, not to get super personal, but it took a lot of, therapy and just kind of introspection to realize that I was not really helping myself and I was I was pigeoning myself in a hole where I was constantly complaining about work and how stressed I was, but also not putting up a boundary and respecting that boundary. So, I ultimately like I left that position, went to another firm, and then I'm actually now doing contract work and I work with that attorney, but because it's contract and it's not a W-2, it's much more easier for me to put up a boundary and say, I don't know that I want to do that work, or I don't know that I can do that at this moment. So a little bit more freedom in that sense.
Good for you.
Great. Boundaries and balance. That's all. That's definitely something to keep in mind especially as our students are moving into their life as a new grad. So I actually wanted to touch on this because I think Stephanie is sharing here that she's currently applying to careers and internships within Los Angeles and Handshake. What was your job search process like for each of you, like when you graduated? What was that process? Did you apply while you were a student? Did you apply to jobs after you graduated? How did you balance the job search as you were transitioning out of being a student?
I can go first. So when I was still at UCLA, I was volunteering for this community program focused on early education with under-resourced and underrepresented communities. And so I know that every year they had an opening for a full-time position out of their regional office in Los Angeles. And so I made it a point to meet that team and to kind of like butter them up. And it worked because I did ultimately get that position when I graduated. Yeah, so that was my personal experience. I really wanted to take advantage of the opportunities and the connections that I had made during undergrad. So that was really what led me into community engagement work at that nonprofit and then making the shift into the private sector and now working in the tech sector. So it's been very back and forth, but life is like that.
Yeah, but not even back and forth. I think it's such a cool way that you can do what you do in multiple industries. We don't have to stay in one industry. You can be in multiple industries and bring all your talents and experience to all of it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. So when I first graduated, I was working in the nonprofit sector, and then in that role, that experience led me to work with a media network for Spanish television called Univision. And so I worked there for a couple of years out of their Philadelphia station and then in their Los Angeles station. And that led me in the field of corporate social responsibility and social impact, where I now work on the social impact team at GoodRx, which is a health tech company. So yeah, like you said, it really shows how, your skills can carry over from completely different sectors.
Awesome. Crystal, I see you're off mute. I was curious. Do you have something to share?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't start really looking for a job until after graduation, and that was a little discouraging. Especially when you're mass applying on like, I I had just looked up Handshake. I've never heard of it before. That's actually a pretty cool little website. I was using, LinkedIn and Indeed, and some just trying to get feelers out. And it wasn't until I think it was off of Indeed, I had applied not realizing it was a um like a temp company. And so they kind of started sending me out to multiple places just so that I could get some, employment and some experience as like, someone who was doing head of desk reception work. Um, and placing me in like like not just legal firms, but like real estate agency companies and just even CAA, which is, one of the big casting agencies in Los Angeles. Um, and they were also simultaneously sending me out and getting me interviews, which was a lot nicer than like just kind of cold emailing or like sending out my resume because didn't seem like it was getting a lot of responses back. So again, I felt really discouraged the first 6 months after college. Um, and it wasn't until I started networking like through LinkedIn and even at alumni events and like my first big job out of college I actually got because I was dog walking while I was at UCLA and I dog walked for somebody who ended up being an attorney and that's how I kind of like streamlined into that business. But before working with him full time, I was doing, those interviews and the temp work, which kind of led me to one place. And as I progressed in my career, it was smooching with people in your industry. And like, it is a little bit of nepotism. It's not like what you know, but who you know. And so that kind of led me to other attorneys seeing my work product and seeing like how I performed and they approaching me and then wanting me to, go to their firms and so forth. So, um, yeah, lots of networking is, I think, maybe the biggest takeaway in my little, tip.
Yeah, building on that, referrals, going through people you know or connections can get you interviews at the very least. And so it's really important to continue to just hold informational interviews. So go on LinkedIn, see if there's an industry, if there's a UCLA alumni that works at the company that you'd like to work for, or in a position that you'd like to work for. And when you first reach out, say you just want to learn more about them, how they got their position, and then, more about their career path. Don't start with, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me?
I did just want to add, though, kind of, it sounded like from Jeff D and also Crystal, like we all didn't end up in the position that we thought we were going to get, like right after graduating. I went back. I worked as front desk at a medical office, so I did that work, knowing that they knew I was applying for full-time positions of what I really wanted to be in, and just being open to things, apply to anything and everything. And I remember going to so many interviews. And if anything else, it's like it's practice, right, to go on all of these interviews. But one thing I definitely learned through all of that is my first first kind of real job in public health or in the field I wanted to be in was actually for a nonprofit housing developer. And I ended up accepting that offer over others that I actually received was because who I was reporting to. It wasn't the exact field. I didn't think homelessness was an issue that I wanted to do children's health. But I met the director, and that's who I would be reporting to. And I was like, God, I want to learn from her, and accepted that position because of that. And so, and one of the best, decisions was that one. Was working in that field. Really learned Los Angeles because it was a nonprofit housing developer, and I did outreach for them. Really got to know LA, and also just she ended up being such a mentor to me. And we're still in touch. She has all these nuggets of wisdom that she shared with me that she has, like, I remember it, but she has no recollection ever sharing it with me. But just as a mentor, she was so helpful for me. So sometimes it's not about like whatever the ideal position you may have, and you end up kind of in a field that you may not have been thinking of, but there's still lots of things to like Eden said earlier, you're still learning. So really being open to that.
Great. No, all of you share, I think, something that we hope that everyone walks away with is that there's no perfect first job, and to be honest, is remembering that there is just a first job. It's not your last job. You're not going to stay in this job forever. But that may it serve you in whatever season you're in. Maybe it is a placeholder job as you prepare for grad school or med school, or maybe it's a placeholder until again, like you find a job that you are really excited about in an industry that you care deeply about. And so, but also know that again, also if it takes time, that's also something that again there's nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes, especially at UCLA, we get kind of competitive with each other, like, oh, this person has a job, maybe I need to have a job, or this person's going off to grad school or med school. Wait, what do I do? And so I think a lot of it is figuring out that you're going to have your story and your journey, um, and that ultimately that where you're meant to be, you will be. And so even just hearing all of your different stories, again, it wasn't this super uber planned, step. Oftentimes it's making yourself open to what can come your way, but being prepared, right? And so at the end of this session, I'm going to share resources from the Alumni Association around job search, around networking, and things like that. So we will make sure you get all of that information as well. And so now I actually want to pivot into finding community and also getting involved with regional networks. All of you are engaged with the area, the networks that you're in your area. And to be honest, in Los Angeles and Southern California is where most of our alumni end up. So if you're staying here in LAOC, you're in good company because the largest majority of Bruins stay in the Southern California area. I think second is Bay Area, and then third is New York. So you're actually in where the majority of Bruins are. So we have numerous networks that are in all these areas because they cover so many different areas. So what was it like getting involved with your network, or even just finding community with Bruins in your area? Does anybody want to start?
Yeah.
Start with, go ahead, Eden.
Oh, sorry. So I'm currently leading OC Bruins, Orange County Network. And when I first started, I joined a branch that had 50 to 75 people. I didn't know anybody there, but you talk to a few people, and then there was a hike, I think a couple weeks later. And so you start to see some familiar faces. And then I was invited to a board meeting, and I started to kind of test the waters and see where I could help out. So there's a lot of things that go on with the networks, and you don't have to just be an attendee. You can say, hey, I want to lead young alumni events, because we definitely need some volunteers. But yeah, we have hikes, we have coffee socials, museum nights, maybe we'll branch into trivia nights. Yeah, so definitely consider all your networks.
Carolyn, you had come off mute.
Yeah, I didn't get involved with the UCLA Alumni Network till much later. When I graduated, I was living in Sherman Oaks, and I honestly thought like to be involved, I have to give money, like to donate, or I don't know why I just had that thought where it's like, oh, I can't because I'm poor and I'm like a new graduate. And so I didn't get involved with it. I was really intimidated, to be honest with you. Now I've been involved with the South Bay Network since 2016. I'm the vice president for the South Bay Network. And I don't even remember. I think they had a relaunch and they had tacos. So I was like, okay, fine, I'm there. And so ended up going there and meeting everyone. And honestly, it's like this, it's like now it's a second family to me. And I can't tell kind of graduating students or, you know, kind of incoming alumni, how much, and Eden and everyone else will attest to this, how much we welcome anyone that comes to events and have any interest in it. It is definitely not about donating money. I don't know where I got that idea from. It is just truly about networking and forming that community and being there for each other. So now we love it. We now actually do 2 to 3 events a month now. We're pretty active now in the South Bay. I tend to like more health and wellness kind of stuff. And so we do peer-to-peer walks, we do hikes. We just went to the botanical garden with Westside Bruins as well. Happy hours are pretty nice and easy. We had a trivia night last night at Common Space Brewery last night, which is also Bruin owned. So we also try to hit up kind of the Bruin owned businesses in the South Bay as well. And we love food because I know every area in LA have their own kind of unique places, but we're also very proud of kind of the food in the South Bay.
Oh yes, the food in the South Bay, also elite. So good, so good. Crystal and Jeff D, do you have any thoughts around the network and getting involved?
Yeah, so as a Bruin, I mean, look, as a transfer, I didn't feel like I got enough time out of UCLA, and I was very proud, I think like most alumni, right, to go to UCLA and want to stay connected in the network. Um, I had started looking and just kind of perusing the UCLA alumni like page, and that's kind of where I found the individual group networks. So Westside Bruins, I'm pretty involved with them. I go to a few of their monthly mixers. There is also there used to be a monthly hike pre-fires, and we just kind of had a couple post-fires. Um, and that's kind of where I met other friends and other people that like graduated from UCLA that are around my age or in my, at least in my cohort, and continued like relationships. I've gone to a few of the Bruin professional meetings, which also have specific chapters, um, location wise, and just based off of like special interests. And so I just, got involved and tried to, stay involved. And as Eden said, as the more you attend these networking events, the more you kind of see similar faces or even just new people, and you just expand your network and get interested in other programs that UCLA offers or alumni offers. So even with the alumni dinners, the D12s, I was doing that in college. I did it after college. I was meeting other Bruins that had participated in other like specific UCLA groups, and that just kind of segued my pathway to land where I did. So
I always knew that I wanted to get involved with the alumni associations. But when I graduated, I lived in the East Coast for a bit, and so it was a little difficult. And so when I moved back, Eric, who is the president of the West Side Bruins, I knew that he was actively involved, and so I reached out to him, and because he's a friend of mine outside of the alum association. I know him from undergrad, and so I reached out to him, and I was like, "Hey, Eric, I want to get involved. I wanted to do either some form of community engagement work with the association." And he was like, "Well, you're in luck because we do need help with our communications and our strategies in that realm." And so I was like, "Well, here I am." And so that was actually last year in October when I roughly started doing supporting them in that way. But it's been great, getting to know more folks and getting to connect with people, and also just like being back in LA and being back like involved with the West Side Bruins has really kind of made me feel connected again to UCLA. I recently I'm a very proud Latino, and so through this involvement, I was able to go to a welcome reception for the chancellor, who is the first Latino chancellor for UCLA, and so I felt very proud to be in that room and in that space. And so, yeah, it's just like being involved has provided those opportunities for me, and I'm very grateful as well.
Great. No, and I think for all the work that you all do, thank you so much. Again, because there's so many Bruins in the Los Angeles, Orange County area. Many people land here. And so wanting to connect with the UCLA community, it's not just with games and coming to the Rose Bowl and Pauley. It really is connecting with Bruins where you are. And to be honest, I've actually heard too that if you're actually terrible at networking and hate working the room, being a volunteer is actually a very good way to meet people, because if you're working check-in, everyone has to come through you to talk to you, and you can meet them and you can say hello, or you're, at a table, or you're just directing them to where the food is. People will come to you. So many people, again, they say, "Oh, I'm terrible at like walking up to someone." But if you have a reason to, sometimes that's a lot better and makes it a lot easier. So getting involved with your networks is definitely a great way to meet people, and volunteering, I think, makes it a lot easier as well. So, I guess, with, all of your engagement with the networks, do you all have any recommendations or tips for our graduates to create new connections and community when they begin, when they graduate in June? Any thoughts around? I know many of you have said, being intentional with your time, because you're not your best friend's not in the apartment next to you, or it does take a lot more coordination. Any other tips for our graduates as they want to make new connections and build new community?
So obviously, if you're in Orange County, join OC Bruins. Shameless plug. If you are working, uh, build connections with your colleagues. Plan group lunches, or maybe your work has a pickleball team. Join that for fun. If you don't have a job yet, you can join industry associations. So there could be a tech association, there could be a marketing association. Other than that, there are groups on Meetup that, either go hiking or maybe rock climbing. So find groups with your common interests and start making connections there.
Great, great tip. Any other tips?
Jeffy said, I'm sorry, mentioned it earlier about like still do stuff that you enjoy outside of work, because you meet people that way too. And I'll make a plug for South Bay. So anyone's in the South Bay region, like please, we have a mate, one of our secretary is like the best chef in the world. So we have meetings every other month at her house and she cooks for us. But I think getting involved in things that you do enjoy, like meetups and hiking. If I love to bake, so I took pastry classes and met people that way too. So things outside of work as well. I think it's just a more natural. So it doesn't like um if you're a little bit more introverted and shy, and like you said, like with the networking, if that's something that you're not comfortable with, but if you're doing something that you're enjoying, you're naturally gonna kind of have dialogue and stuff like that with folks. So I think doing something that you enjoy, I think will lend you to kind of creating communities that way too.
I want to echo what Eden said earlier about, really utilizing the power of the UCLA Alumni Association, right? We are a powerful bunch across LA, and providing that opportunity or that time to speak with someone and connect with someone. And like Eden said, don't directly just ask for a referral or say, it's because sometimes you really do find so much insight and value just meeting someone and talking to them and getting to know more about what they're doing and how they're involved. And so I think don't be afraid to utilize the network that UCLA has and reach out to folks. I also put in my LinkedIn here in the chat if you want to connect with me and talk about my career trajectory if you have any questions post grad as well. But also, yeah, for example, when I was at UCLA, I sang with the UCLA Chamber Singers. And so that was something that kind of took my mind off of academics and school, and it gave me a time during the week to focus on music and, connecting with colleague or co-classmates or friends in that way. So now as an adult, outside of the college space, right, I sing with a group called Pacific Chorale based in Orange County. And so right now I'm actually at the Segerstrom Center because I have a dress rehearsal later tonight.
Ah,
But but yeah, this is the production office, which I've never been in. I requested to use the space. But that's something that I look forward to, that gives me something to do outside of work and outside of like going to the gym or something like that. And in this group, I've also made connections and I've made friends, and some of them are professional musicians, some of them are not, and are actively pursuing careers in health, in marketing, and in other industries and fields. And so, relying on that, on your interests and your hobbies to also make those connections is also a good way to get yourself out there.
great. No, thank you. Amazing tips. Crystal, did you want to add a tip?
Yeah, mine's not like alum or UCLA specific, I will say, and I didn't get my dog till 2022, but having a dog and having a high energy breed also got me to go to the dog park, the local dog park, and meet people that were around my age, had similar interests. We had dogs that we already knew that got along because they would, socialize. Um, so if it's in your budget or you're available to do that, I would obviously plug getting a little furry animal to help with some branching out and finding some interests.
That's our definitely bring people together. So that's a great tip. So I do want to open up the floor if any of our guests have questions. So feel free to add that into the Q&A if you have a question you want to ask the panel. But we did have some submitted questions from before the event, and I wanted to ask your thoughts again. If one question is, what are fun things in the OC alum events for people moving to OC post grad? What are some fun things events for them to do? For our OC folks.
So much. Hiking. There are so many trails around Orange County, and we do try to set up a hike on the second Saturday of each month, and we'll try to hit different neighborhoods, whether we're ending up in Laguna or Brenna Park or Irvine or Huntington Beach. So we do try to kind of spread it around. And then there's also we had coffee chats for a while. I want to kick off dinners, like our version of a D12, um, museum nights. Would love to kick off trivia nights. So there's a lot that we can do in Orange County, and if we haven't done it before, it doesn't mean that we can't. This might be a little too early, but on Saturday, June 7th, we have a rock climbing event with the co-founder, Alex Cow. She graduated '01, and she's going to kind of give an intro to rock climbing class and then talk about her entrepreneurial experience. So there's a lot, and there's a lot we can do still.
Great. And of course, food. The Vietnamese coffee in Orange County is just
Yes.
the best. Like very good. So
Come on down.
yes. For actually just general, what are some resume tips to help you stand out in the job application process post grad, if anyone has any?
So one of my temporary jobs was actually working in HR and like going through multiple resumes. And I learned this when I was in high school because my senior year they did a whole like job prep. It was part of our senior project. Make sure your resume is one page because recruiters do not, when they're sifting through a million resumes, especially when they're like cold emailed, do not have the time to go through. So keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it a page. Make sure you have relevant, work experience that's catered to like whatever position you're applying to. Make sure that you're not just including, the summer job that you had doing like, I don't know, like ice cream sales, unless it's a sales job, right? So you want to make sure that whatever is on your resume is relevant to the job that you're posting and cater those entries to that. But one page, one page.
I second that as well. Many students, it's tough, even for those who've been in full-time roles for a while. If you're kind of breaking into an industry and you're not applying for a C-suite job or a professor job, it's a one page just to get it in there. But if you have to play with the margins, you can keep writing, just keep it all in one page. So, Eden, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, this was a question I just asked HR today. I told her, hey, I've got some questions here, and can I pick your brain? She kept repeating, proofread your resume. No typos, no grammatical errors. Have have a mentor read it. Have someone in the industry review it for you, but definitely proofread your resume. And as Crystal said, highlight only the relevant jobs, or position your skills in a way that it's relevant to the job that you're applying for. Along the lines, after the resume, interview tips. Be prepared, research the company. Like, don't show up to an interview and not know what the company does. And then also be prepared with thoughtful questions, other than, when is the next raise? So research and be prepared. Again, no typos on the resume, please.
And also for anyone who is using AI for your resume and cover letter, again, those are wonderful tools to use, but remember, edit them, because a lot of times we think, oh, it should be perfect, send away, but then actually there's a wrong word. Like, people can tell when it's done by AI. And so if you want to take that step and use it, great, but you also need to make sure it runs through your filter and that you read it and that it's through your voice. And so many times it's very clear when something is done through AI, and more recruiters and application tracking systems can see it. So just something to know that the technology you will use, they have technology to see whether or not you used it. So definitely be sure to edit. Jeffy, did you want to add something?
Yeah, one tip I like to incorporate when updating my resume, especially like the bullet points, is to include what you did, and the program or software that you used to do it, and then the results of what you were doing, so so people can see the impact of what you're doing. And as well, I had one quick interview tip. But I love Eden's point about the intentional questions, but also just incorporating questions about the people that are interviewing you, right? People love talking about themselves. So, a quick search of their LinkedIn profile, and it's like, oh, I noticed that you did this, this, and that. How do you integrate that into this current role? People love that.
Nice. Great tips. Great tips. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists for their time today. We took the whole time and talked about a lot of things. But before we end, I did want to share a couple of resources for our attendees and our viewers. Just something to think about. We have resources. The Alumni Association has resources for you as a student right now, and then also into your time as a new grad. So new grad tools are all the different career resources and tools that we have available for you, from a job search starter kit to webinars on resume and LinkedIn, things like that. So feel free to check it out. Also, a pro tip: after graduation, you only have 3 months of utilizing the Career Center. So be sure to utilize it before you leave if you would like to. But if not, our team is available to work with you and to help you through your process. Um, Also, the class of 2025, these are programs and resources that are available for you now, and also includes the celebration week, which is events and giveaways for you to celebrate you. So definitely check out this page and stay up to date on all the things that are going on in your area for you as a class of 2025. Regional networks. Again, we have so many different regional networks in the LA and OC area. So please check out the lists, find a network that's close to you. And again, raise your hand, volunteer, get engaged, because like Carolyn learned, you don't have to donate. You don't have to be a donor to be a part of it. You can just be a volunteer. We just want to get to know you and engage with you. And then lastly, UCLA One is a platform, a networking platform from the UCLA Alumni Association to help you connect with alumni, to do informational interviews, mock interviews, resume critiques, and just to get connected. So whether you're looking for your first job or looking for your next job, this is a site that you can use. And alumni have already raised their hand. They've already said, yes, we want to help you. So if LinkedIn is very intimidating for you because you don't know if you're able to like get them to help you, UCLA One is a great place to start, and it's free for you now as a student and as alumni. So definitely check out these resources. These are available to you. And again, thank you to our panelists. What a great conversation we had today. Thank you for your sharing your stories of where you went after you graduated, and then even to now. And, again, we can say Bruins are the best, I think, and our network is so strong. But we need to keep in touch, keep in contact, volunteer, get engaged. And thank you to these wonderful panelists for sharing their experience and their time with us today. So on that note, thank you for coming. And then also go Bruins. Have a great day.